Parkinson's is really tricky. We don't know good days from bad days until you're in it.
For a long time, the garage behind Ozzy Osbourne's estate remained closed, tucked away from the spotlight. Not many knew it existed, and those who did assumed it was just another storage space. But when it was finally opened, what was found inside offered a surprising glimpse into the lesser-known world of the rock legend. Ozzy Osbourne may be known for his music, his antics, and his larger-than-life image. But his garage tells a quieter story, one about taste, nostalgia, and the many roads he's traveled, both literally and figuratively. So, strap in, because what you are about to discover will shock you. The man Ozzy. Born John Michael Osbourne on December 3, 1948. In Aston, Birmingham, England, grew up in a working-class household with 5 siblings. Dyslexic and prone to mischief. He struggled academically and left school at the age of 15, bouncing between factory jobs. But it was music, particularly the raw energy of rock and blues, that called to him early. His break came in 1968, when he joined forces with guitarist Tony Iommi, bassist Geezer Butler, and drummer Bill Ward to form the band Black Sabbath. They pioneered a new sound-heavy, dark, and aggressive that would lay the foundation for heavy metal. With Ozzy's eerie vocals and wild stage persona, Sabbath released landmark albums like Paranoid and Master of Reality, changing rock music forever. However, by 1979, Ozzy's drug and alcohol addiction became too severe for the band to manage, and he was fired. What seemed like a tragic end became a new beginning. He launched a solo career that exploded with success. Albums like Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman introduced hits like Crazy Train and Mr. Crowley, solidifying Ozzy as a force on his own. Despite ongoing substance abuse issues, legal troubles, and health scares, Ozzy remained prolific throughout the 80s and 90s. His stage shows were known for theatrics, sometimes gruesome, always unforgettable. He also became the subject of controversy, particularly after biting the head off a bat during a concert in 1982. An act that became a bizarre but iconic symbol of his unpredictable image. In his later years, Ozzy faced a series of serious health issues, including Parkinson's disease, a near-fatal infection, a neck surgery following a fall, and more. Despite these setbacks, he released his final solo albums, including Ordinary Man 2020 and Patient No. 9 2022. Both met with critical praise. He wasn't just the godfather of heavy metal, he was its soul, and his voice, music, and spirit. Live on in every riff that dares to be loud. A year ago next month, I was in a shocking state. On July 5, 2025, Ozzy performed his final concert with Black Sabbath at Villa Park in his hometown of Birmingham, titled Back to the Beginning. Though unable to walk due to Parkinson's disease, he performed from a throne and was supported by fellow heavy metal icons like Metallica, Slayer, and Guns N' Roses. Just 17 days after that farewell show, he passed away peacefully at age 76. Surrounded by family, his life was marked by extremes from addiction and near-death experiences to reinvention, love, and an enduring connection with millions of fans, whether on stage, screaming into the void, or quietly sipping tea in his garden. Ozzy was always unapologetically himself, leaving behind a legacy that stretched across 5 decades. But beneath the eyeliner, its chaos, and public persona lies a man who is constantly evolving and quietly reflective. And perhaps nothing captures that side of him better than what was found when they opened his garage. The ungrateful task fell on his surviving family members. First among them, his wife Sharon. She was one of the few people who already knew what they would find inside. But the rest of the world was in for a surprise. Ozzy's collection. Inside wasn't the chaos people expected. There were no shattered guitars, no leftover props from his stage shows. Instead, they found cars. Dozens of them, each one carefully chosen, stored, and preserved as if they meant something. And for Ozzy, they did. "I wanted to leave something behind," he once said in an interview. And looking into his garage, he really left something behind with each vehicle, representing a chapter in his story. For a man who'd seen the highs of stardom and the lows of addiction, these cars were more than machines. They were milestones. They told stories of recovery, reinvention, and reflection. They also showed that, while Ozyy was often loud and unpredictable in public, in private, he was intentional, even nostalgic. And perhaps that's why the discovery inside his garage has sparked so much interest. It wasn't just about the cars themselves, though many were rare and iconic. It was about what those choices said about him. How a man so associated with chaos could find peace in a quiet garage full of carefully maintained vehicles. How a musician so tied to rebellion could still crave order. And how someone who built a life on stage could leave something behind offstage. Ozzy's collection wasn't just engines and wheels. They were fragments of his life. Nostalgic souvenirs he managed to retain from different eras of his wild journey through the world. They were proof that the Prince of Darkness had a softer side, one shaped by love, legacy, and the desire to be remembered. I'll be talking to you and after this other side. Because Ozyy had never been just one thing. He was the wild man on stage and the soft-spoken grandfather at home. He was chaos and control. And his garage mirrored every bit of that duality. Starting off his garage collection is the Daimler DS 420. The regal limo is a vehicle more often associated with diplomats, royalty, and formal processions than with rock legends. The Daimler DS 420 is a British limousine that speaks the language of elegance. Powered by a 4.2L Jaguar inline-six engine, it produces about 245 horsepower and reaches a top speed of around 110 miles per hour. While those numbers aren't meant to thrill speed enthusiasts. That's not the point of this car. It was designed for grace, comfort, and a dignified presence on the road. Long, imposing, and refined. This is a car you're driven in, not one you drive. So why did Ozzy Osbourne, a man defined by his defiance and unpredictability, choose such a stately machine? It comes down to balance, something few people associate with the Prince of Darkness. Ozzy's life has always been one of extremes, from music that shook generations to personal struggles with addiction and fame. But even the most chaotic souls crave calm, and the DS420 provided that. Unlike his more aggressive rides, the Daimler told a quieter story. It nodded to his British roots, his appreciation for craftsmanship, and perhaps even his desire to retreat from the public eye every now and then. Inside the DS420, the atmosphere changes. The interior is plush with leather seats and wood veneer panels that give off an old-world charm. It was a car that didn't scream for attention, but still held it. And for someone who spent decades being larger than life, this car offered something rare. Peace that paints a very different picture from the Ozyy most people know. But it's a crucial one. This car wasn't about image. It was about intention. It reflected a deeper part of him that valued history, tradition, and stillness, all things the public rarely got to see. When they opened Ozzy Osbourne's garage, this limousine didn't just shock people. It redefined what they thought they knew about him. It proved that beneath the rocker persona was a man who occasionally craved normalcy, dignity, and a taste of ties. The old-fashioned life. The Daimler DS420 may not be the flashiest item in his collection, but it might just be the most revealing. But my house in Ludds Road is still there. A regal, understated nod to a quieter side of Ozyy that rarely stepped into the spotlight. But we can't say the same about the next item in his collection. Among the more understated or not-cade or traditional vehicles in Ozzy Osbourne's garage, the Ferrari 458 Italia stood out like a lit fuse. Bold, brash, and unapologetically fast, draped in classic Ferrari red and engineered for raw performance. It wasn't just a car. It was a weapon on wheels and a sharp contrast to the quieter chapters of Ozzy's life. Launched in 2009, the Ferrari 458 Italia marked a turning point in Ferrari's design and engineering evolution. It replaced its F430 and introduced a sharper, more aggressive look with better aerodynamics and more refined handling. Its 4.5L, naturally aspirated V8 engine produced 562 to 570 horsepower and redlined at a screaming 9,000 revolutions per minute, one of the highest driving engines ever fitted in a road car. The 458 could sprint from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 3.3 seconds. And its top speed exceeded 202 miles per hour. This was not the kind of machine you idled through Beverly Hills traffic in. It was meant for twisting mountain roads or track day dominance. And Ozyy knew it. When he drove it, it must have made him feel younger, louder, more alive. And that transformation was key. The 458 Italia wasn't about convenience or comfort. It was Ozzy's rebellion on four wheels, a flash of youthful defiance against the creeping quiet of age. The car's dual-clutch 7-speed transmission shifted faster than the blink of an eye, and its race-bred suspension and brakes gave it precision handling that bordered on the surgical. Inside, the cockpit was minimal and focused. No distractions, just purpose. But the Ferrari also came with risk, especially for someone with Ozzy's history. Decades of substance abuse, insomnia, and erratic behavior made the idea of high-speed driving a serious concern. According to insiders, Sharon Osbourne intervened more than once, fearing that Ozzy's impulsive nature and the Ferrari's unforgiving power could lead to disaster. Several of his Ferraris were eventually sold off, not out of resentment, but as a protective measure. The 458, however, remained for a while longer, perhaps because it represented more than just speed. It symbolized a moment in time when Ozyy felt untouchable again, a time when he could outrun the past even for just a few minutes. The 458 also had undeniable artistry. Designed by Pininfarina, it blended aggression and elegance with swooping lines, triple exhaust tips, and a chassis that balanced beauty with aerodynamics. Even at a standstill, it looked like it was moving. It wasn't just about adrenaline, it was about precision, identity, and legacy. When Ozzy's garage doors opened, the Ferrari 458 Italia wasn't just another high-performance toy. It was a symbol of excess, escape, and energy. A bright red exclamation mark in a career full of contradictions. While other cars offered comfort or utility, the 458 delivered raw sensation. A reminder that beneath the calm of later years, the wild child of rock still burned bright in this same garage filled with rare collectibles and bold performance machines. The Mercedes-Benz W20119OE didn't scream for attention, and that's exactly why it stood out, known as the Baby Benz. This compact executive sedan was the quiet underdog of Ozzy Osbourne's collection, a car built on reliability rather than showmanship. Introduced in the early 1980s, the 190E was Mercedes' first foray into the compact luxury segment. Ozzy's version featured a 2.5L inline-5 engine delivering approximately 167 horsepower, with a top speed of 125 miles per hour and a 0 to 60 miles per hour time of around 8 seconds. While it wasn't designed for high-octane thrills, it offered something just as important: dependability, comfort, and refinement. So why would Ozzy Osbourne, a man defined by his wild career and over-the-top persona, own a car that bankers and middle managers drove? Because the 190E wasn't about flash, it was about function. And after decades of chaos, Ozzy knew the value of something that simply worked. No drama, no breakdowns, just clean engineering that got him from point A to point B with zero fuss. Built with precision German craftsmanship, the W201 was over-engineered for its time. It had a rigid chassis, excellent suspension, and legendary build quality. It was the kind of car that aged gracefully, still capable of daily use decades after leaving the factory. That alone made it appealing to someone like Ozzy, who had seen enough volatility in life. It was the one he drove when he didn't want to be Ozzy Osbourne, just John from Birmingham running errands. In those moments, the 190E became more than a car. It became a reset button. While other cars in his collection projected power or excess, the Baby Benz allowed him to disappear. No tinted windows, no roaring engine, just a comfortable ride and a sense of normalcy. Its subtle design worked in his favor. No paparazzi suspected Ozzy would be behind the wheel of such a modest sedan. But for him, that anonymity was the point. He didn't always want to be recognized. Sometimes he just wanted a smooth drive, too. Clear his head, escape a tabloid-fueled reality, or simply feel grounded. Inside. The 190E featured Mercedes' trademark ergonomic simplicity, functional dials, quality materials, and just enough technology to feel premium without being overwhelming. Everything had a purpose, much like the role the car played in Ozzy's life. While fans and collectors tend to focus on flashy Ferraris or monstrous muscle cars, the Mercedes-Benz 190E quietly revealed a different side of Ozzy's psyche, one that appreciated balance, routine, and reliability. It wasn't a rock star's car, it was a man's car. A reminder that even icons need structure and stability in a life ruled by extremes. Another seemingly ordinary car found among the flashy sports cars and luxury sedans in Ozzy Osbourne's eclectic garage was the Volvo 240. Boxy, slow, and utterly utilitarian, the Volvo seemed like a misfit in a rock legend's lineup. And yet, it earned its place not by turning heads, but by offering something far rarer in Ozzy's world: unshakable reliability. First introduced in 1974, the Volvo 240 became a symbol of safety and durability. Ozzy's version was likely a late 80s or early 90s model, equipped with a 2.3L four-cylinder engine producing around 112 horsepower. It had a modest top speed of about 103 miles per hour and could accelerate from 0 to 60 miles per hour in roughly 11 seconds, slow by most standards, but it wasn't built for speed. It was built like a tank with a focus on safety, longevity, and day-to-day dependability. For a man who lived through decades of chaos, wild tours, media frenzy, and addiction battles, the appeal of a car like the 240 becomes clearer. It meant to impress anyone. It was built to endure, just like Ozzy himself. It was like the roadie of his garage, not the star, but always there when things got messy. The Volvo 240's reputation for safety was legendary. Volvo famously crash-tested it beyond industry standards, leading to its widespread adoption by families, safety-conscious professionals, and even law enforcement in some countries. The body was over-engineered with crumple zones and reinforced steel, while the interior focused on function over form. No leather trims or high-tech features, just solid, practical design. For Ozzy, it served a very different role than his Ferraris or Bentleys. The 240 was his go-to during quieter moments, school drop-offs, supply runs, or midnight drives when he just needed to get away without being seen. It didn't draw crowds or encourage speeding. It simply worked every single time. That kind of consistency was rare in his life. The 240 was also easy to maintain. Its simple mechanics meant fewer breakdowns, easier repairs, and less hassle, a blessing for someone with a complex schedule and unpredictable lifestyle. In that sense, it wasn't just a car, it was a stabilizing force. When other vehicles in his collection sat in garages waiting for parts or service appointments, the Volvo 240 was ready to go. The car's understated presence says more about Ozzy than any roaring engine ever could. In a life defined by extremes, the Volvo 240 was the quiet middle ground, a machine that didn't demand attention but quietly earned respect. It was a car that understood the value of getting home safely, of blending in, of holding together even when everything else was falling apart. The Volvo 240 wasn't the loudest, fastest, or flashiest in his garage, but it may have been the most honest, a humble tank that carried a living legend through life's messiest roads, modestly tucked beside. The flashy cars in Ozzy's garage was a car that stood in quiet contrast, the Audi R8. It didn't announce itself with a roar or a flamboyant paint job. But to those who knew performance, it didn't need to. Introduced in 2006, the Audi R8 was Audi's first true supercar, a mid-engine marvel developed in part with Lamborghini and infused with racing. DNA Ozzy's version was one of the V10 models, equipped with a naturally aspirated 5.2L engine capable of producing 525 to 550 horsepower. Depending on the trim, it could hit 60 miles per hour in just over 3 seconds with a top speed north of 195 miles per hour, all while maintaining an understated, almost stealthy presence. The R8's Quattro all-wheel drive system gave it exceptional grip even under aggressive acceleration, while its aluminum space frame kept weight down without sacrificing rigidity. The dual-clutch S-tronic transmission delivered fast, smooth shifts, and the suspension was tuned for a rare balance. Stiff enough for sharp handling, soft enough for comfortable long drives. For Ozyy, the Audi R8 wasn't about spectacle, it was about control. That distinction matters because by the time the R8 joined his collection, Ozyy had already lived through decades of excess to heavy drinking, the drug-fueled tours, the near-death experiences. The R8 represented a shift. It wasn't a toy for chaos. It was a machine for reflection, for motion without madness. Inside, the R8's cabin was all business. Driver-focused, minimal distractions, just leather, carbon fiber, and precision German engineering. The flat-bottom steering wheel, digital gauges and paddle shifters put the driver at the center of the experience. And Ozyy surprisingly appreciated that simplicity. There were no gimmicks here, no vanity, just speed and silence working together. Unlike the brutal aggression of a Ferrari or the vintage presence of a Daimler, the R8 had a modern restraint. It was the kind of car a man buys when he no longer needs to prove anything. Not to fans, not to tabloids, not even to himself. In many ways, it mirrored Ozzy's evolution. A man still deeply rooted in rock and metal, but who had found some degree of peace in the aftermath. The R8 wasn't an impulse buy or a headline grabber. It was deliberate. It was calculated. The Audi didn't try to steal the spotlight. It didn't need to. It whispered its legacy, just like Ozyy in his quieter moments. No less legendary, just more measured. When they opened Ozzy Osbourne's garage, they weren't just uncovering metal and horsepower. They were peeling back the layers of a man who'd lived 1,000 lives in one. From the moment the door creaked open, it became clear. This wasn't a typical celebrity collection. It was a time capsule. His garage told a story, not just a collection of engines and metal. It's a quiet museum of a life lived loudly. Each car represents a chapter: the chaos, the calm, the indulgence, and the moments of clarity. Some reflect the wild rocker the world knows, while others hint at the thoughtful man behind the fame. The father, the survivor, the dreamer. What they found inside wasn't shocking because of price tags or horsepower. It was shocking because it revealed something unexpected: restraint, sentimentality, and even a sense of peace. Ozyy once said, "I wanted to leave something behind." And maybe in his own way, he has. Not just through albums and anthems, but in this quiet corner of his world where stories are parked and memories are kept alive. Because when it comes to Ozzy Osbourne, the engine never really turns off. It just waits for the right moment to start again. Which of these iconic cars are you most surprised to see in Ozzy Osbourne's garage? Let us hear from you in the comments section below. We hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more content like this.